Hello and welcome. I'm Ananya Datta and you're watching Race to Power. We have a special bulletin today with elections taking place in two critical countries. Wherever you're watching us from, these elections are bound to have an impact on you. So stay tuned. We will start this broadcast with Iran, where 12 hours from now, polls will open. And out of the 6 candidates, 2 have made their last-minute exits. Our reporter Anas Malik will tell you what's happening on the ground and what the voters are saying. Then we'll go to Iran's foe, United States, a country where voters are having their deja vu moment. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are gearing up for their first presidential election, and with everything else polarized, age is the only issue tying them together. Now, it has been a little over a month since Ebrahim Raisi's sudden death. Iran is finally set to pick a new president on Friday. The candidates on the ballot have reduced to 4, and none of them is a clear favorite. 80 candidates entered the race to be president. The Guardian Council approved only 6, barring all 7 of the women candidates. And in the final stretch, 2 of them, both conservatives, have already dropped out in the last 12 hours. Amir Hussain Hashemi was the first to resign from the candidacy. Hashemi was one of Raisi's vice presidents, and he had campaigned on a continuation of the former president's policies. And as he pulled out, Hashemi urged other conservative candidates to offer a united front. Soon after, Tehran's mayor Ali Reza Zakini joined Hashemi and boarded the withdrawal wagon. Zakani had attempted to run for president in 2013 as well as 2017. It was only in 2021 that he received approval from the Guardian Council, only to withdraw his candidacy as he backed out yet again this time. Zakani also asked the 2 conservative candidates to unite and not leave the revolutionary forces' rightful demands unanswered. Emerging as the most significant of them is Mohammad Bakir Ghalibaf. He has served as Speaker of the Parliament since 2020. He boasts an extensive military history, including 3 years as Commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, Air Force. The 3 other candidates have all been IRGC officials as well, and this is where it gets interesting. Ghalibaf maintains close ties to the IRGC. He is known for his role in crackdowns on student protests in Iran while serving as an IRGC general and later as the police chief. The second key contender is another conservative, Syed Jalili. Though he served as the country's nuclear negotiator, Jalili is a critic of international negotiations over Iran's nuclear program. If elected, Jalili is expected to continue the harsh crackdown on anti-government protests and on Iranian women accused of violating the country's mandatory hijab rule. Now, Mustafa Pur Mohammadi is the only cleric in the race, also a conservative. He had a leading role in the 1988 executions of thousands of political prisoners held in Iranian jails. Let's now look at the sole reformist in the race, Masoud Pezeshkian. He has been based in campaign around Iranian women, youth and ethnic minorities. He has focused on reopening nuclear talks with the West. Analysts even say that allowing Pezeshkian to run could be an attempt to increase voter turnout. The question is, will Iran's moderates turn out in favor of Pezeshkian, or will they not turn out at all? You see, the outcome is far from certain, and this is viewed as a welcome change from the last election. Votes could be tallied as soon as Sunday, but according to experts, it is likely that none of the contenders will win a simple majority. And in that case, Iranians will take to the polls once again in July for a runoff election between the 2 frontrunners. We would like to remind our viewers at this point that this election comes at the helm of an untimely death of Ebrahim Raisi, who was the president of Iran and a close ally of the leader, the supreme leader of Iran, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who also directly and indirectly plays a crucial role when it comes to Iran's presidential elections. Just 12 hours from now, we will see the 4 men contesting and the voters turnout is under question as we speak. Now, 61 million voters will cast their vote to choose the next president. Let's take you through the election process of the West Asian nation of Iran. First up, the role of the president. The president runs the country's day-to-day activities, but real power on issues such as Iran's nuclear program and its foreign policy remains in the hands of supreme leader. President is the executive head of the government, and this includes ministers and about 12 vice presidents and a slate of departments along with agencies that manage the country. President is also answerable to the parliament, and he can be compelled to appear before the assembly to face elections. The president has the power to choose his own cabinet. However, each appointment is subject to parliamentary approval. Now, the candidate screening process is done by the Guardian Council, and they screen candidates for their political and Islamic qualifications. The council is a hardline vetting body of clerics and jurists appointed by the supreme leader himself, along with Islamic jurists nominated by the judiciary chief and approved by the parliament. For a person to contest these elections, according to Iran's constitution, the person has to come from the country's religious and political elite and must have Iranian nationality and be of Iranian origin. Moreover, the Guardian Council bars women from standing for president, although some top clerics and human rights lawyers argue that the constitution does not exclude them. All votes will be counted manually, so the final result may not be announced for at least 2 days, although partial results may appear sooner. However, if no candidate wins at least 50% plus one vote of all ballots cast, including blank votes, a runoff round between the top two candidates is held on the very first Friday after the election result is declared. Let's now go across to our correspondent Anas Malik, who is in Tehran covering the elections. Anas, good to see you. This presidential election comes just months after the parliamentary elections in Iran that saw one of the lowest voter turnouts. How is it looking this time?
Well, good evening to you from Tehran and all the viewers here back across. Now, it's a hot, humid and sunny day in Tehran. It was 36 degrees and it's expected to go 38 degrees tomorrow as the country goes out to vote. Ananya, I'm currently standing in the Tajrish Bazaar, the historical Tajrish Bazaar, where you would find all sorts of spices just as you walk in from here, which is literally towards my right. You walk into the market and you'll find all sorts of people from all sorts of races, and they're there to continue with their daily life. And we've managed to speak to a couple of them. Most of them were disappointed for how things have panned out in the past couple of years, in the previous government precisely, but they're hopeful. They're hopeful that their fate would change with the vote. They're hopeful that the new government, as and when it comes into power after the vote tomorrow, would be able to do public-centric reforms, would be able to bring in economic reforms that are much more needed, which would lead to inflation levels coming down, and of course more economic prosperity for the local Iranians, because that is what their immediate worry is. So we're expecting that out of the 61 million voters who are eligible to vote tomorrow between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time, we're expecting quite of a turnout across the country, though the final results would be known 24 hours after the polling has ended. Ananya?
Absolutely, Anas, and I would want to talk to you about Masoud Pezeshkian, because that is one man, the only reformist in Iran's presidential election, and he seemed to be a sort of in the middle ground when it comes to Iran and not just the West but the rest of the world. He wants to open talks when it comes to the nuclear talks, the JCPOA, and he also wants to talk about the women, the youth, which is something we're not hearing from the other candidates so much. What are you hearing from the voters when it comes to reformists like Pezeshkian?
Well, Masood Pezeshkian would be an impact player. That is a given for two reasons, not one. The first is that since the Mahsa Amini protests of 2022 and of course the COVID lockdown, the handling of the situation back then by the government, that is something that has given power to the opposition or to the reformist side and popularity and legitimacy among the locals. That is number one. And number two is the split voter bank currently among the right-wing parties that President Raisi belonged to, for the fact that both Bakr Kalibaf and Saeed Jalili, both belonging to the right-wing party, are currently contesting. Both have not withdrawn, so they will be sort of damaging the voter bank. But Masood Pezeshkian remains to be the popular candidate, and I would not be surprised, or people should not be surprised, in case if it's a closed margin race, right, or in case if even Masood Pezeshkian ends up becoming the next president of Iran after tomorrow's polls. Ananya?
All right, Anas, thank you so much for getting us all those updates from Tehran. Let's stay with Iran. As the country prepares for its presidential election, the impact of international sanctions on the economy is a critical issue for voters. Inflation has skyrocketed to 52.3% in 2023, and the Iranian rial has plummeted to 700,000 per dollar. Analysts point out to a lot of issues plaguing Iran's economy. The sanctions reinstated in 2018 due to Iran's nuclear program and support for terror groups have led to widespread economic hardship. Gasoline shortages persist despite Iran's vast oil resources, and the cost of living has soared, with millions of Iranians now surviving on approximately $200 a month. Basic goods like dairy, rice and meat have become increasingly unaffordable, reflecting the deepening economic crisis ahead of the elections.
The economic situation is getting worse by the day, and I don't think anything good will happen with the current system.
Unemployment hovers at 7.6% and many formal jobs pay insufficient wages. The government has resorted to selling bonds, raising taxes and increasing prices to cover budget deficits. Economic experts argue that addressing Iran's economic woes will require lifting sanctions and tackling deep-seated inefficiencies and mismanagement. The outcome of the upcoming election will be pivotal in shaping the country's economic future. Now, away from the economy, let's also take a look at some of the domestic and international concerns that are playing a big role in Iran's presidential polls. As vast majority of Iranians want a secular government instead of a theocratic dictatorship, women's rights has gained prominence ahead of the polls. There has been a growing demand to drop the hijab law. The renewed hijab push comes barely 2 years since mass protests over custodial death of Mahsa Amini, who was detained for not following country's scarf rules. Tough unilateral sanctions by the United States has compounded the Iran's economic crisis, as we told you in detail, with inflation soaring and the people of Iran have been scrambling to make their ends meet. Iran's contentious relations with Israel and the United States amid raging war is one of the key talking points in this polls. With the new Iran government eyeing a future nuclear program, Donald Trump's possible political comeback in the United States has put Iran on tenterhooks. Remember, Trump's decision back in 2018 to unilaterally withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal saw crushing sanctions, and Tehran was cut out of the world's economy. The sanctions had worsened the political climate, triggering mass protests over economic problems. Meanwhile, the Israel-Gaza conflict has added fuel to already raging fire. Iran's support to Hamas, Lebanon's Hezbollah and Yemen's Houthi rebels and its unprecedented direct attack on Israel during the war with Gaza has made it a direct enemy in the conflict. Remember, COVID mismanagement had left the Islamic Republic in deep crisis, forcing the authorities to take tough decisions. So that's another concern for the voters in Iran. All right, now let's talk about the men of the hour. They have traded barbs for months, calling each other names and questioned each other's policies. But about 12 hours from now, they will have exactly what the two say they are ready for. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are flying to Georgia for their presidential debate. Both of their campaign teams are busy putting off their messages offline and online. The debate is actually happening very early in the campaign trail this time. The first presidential debates are typically held in the fall months, September and October. Biden and Trump have not even been declared as the nominees of their respective camps. That's Republicans and Democrats. And with this historic face-off merely hours away, let's give you a refresher on some basic rules of engagement both men have to agree to during the debate. President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will face off in a 90-minute debate. American broadcast channel CNN will be acting as the host for the entirety of the debate. Now, uncharacteristically, no studio or live audience will be present to witness and give live reactions. Both candidates will be given a pen, a pad of paper and a bottle of water. Any other objects or props will not be allowed. Podium positions will be determined by the flip of a coin, wherein the victor gets to choose which side he stands. No opening statements will be permitted this time by either of the leaders. Microphones will be muted throughout the debate except for the candidate whose turn it is to speak. Following each speech, the two leaders will have 2 minutes to answer each question, followed by a minute each of rebuttals and responses to those. Now, the debate will feature 2 commercial breaks, and during those 2 commercial breaks, staffers from either leader's campaigning entourage will not be allowed to interact with their respective candidate. It remains to be seen how many of these rules are actually respected and how many are tested. Now, for more on this, we are going across to our correspondent in New York. Susan Teran is joining us live. Susan, good to see you. The experts we have been speaking to say that most voters already know for whom they are planning to vote in November. What can change after this debate?
So a lot of voters and viewers will indeed be looking at the performance of these two men on that stage. But advisors are telling President Biden and former President Donald Trump to stick to key issues and stick to policy issues. What is your vision for the future of the United States, and what can you do under pressure? We do know that Donald Trump's advisors have been telling him to not debate Joe Biden, but speak directly to the American people and ask them if they're really better off as they were 4 years ago. We know that the economy is going to be on the agenda. Of course, the issue of illegal migration and open border policies of the Biden administration will be attacked by Trump, but also the issue of abortion and crime as well. I did think that it was interesting that Donald Trump's deputy communication director said that Joe Biden is leading on abortion and he will try to frame this as a women's issue because of recent incidents and high crimes like rape and murder of numerous women by illegal migrants here in the United States. Donald Trump may try to tie the issue of women's rights to border security as well, basically saying that you can't be pro-women on the one hand with abortion, but then leave the border open for women to be assaulted by your policies. So that was interesting.
All right, Susan, thank you so much for joining us on WION, getting us all those updates from New York. You, of course, have a long day ahead of you. Good to see you. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
WION Health Resort is unique, the only one of its kind. Experience the 4 paths of natural wellness: yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy. Each uniquely customized program improves the whole person to make every person whole. Come to WION Health Resort. Make your reservation at WION.com.
Everyone loves a contest. But sport isn't just about victory and defeat. When the GOATs in sport speak, you hear it first on WION.
You have to play good cricket over a period of time.
I actually pushed myself right out of the damn tournament.
We go beyond the stats. Our stories are quoted the world over.
At WION, sport is part of our DNA. Come, join us on this journey. Weekdays 6:30 p.m. IST, 1 p.m. GMT.
Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, leader of the Rwandan Patriotic Front,